That's good. Let me hit record. And count down. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome inside our Little Yankees podcast, episode 32. We're moving along. We're performing each and every week, and the New York Yankees are not. Hey, as always, I'm Julian Coltree, joined alongside Josh Levin and Eric Ray Sepulveda. Boys, what is up?
Oh yeah, just enjoyed a nice weekend, 4th of July weekend. The Yankees, not great, but I didn't let that ruin my time, and I'm not going to let them ruin the rest of my summer.
Yep,
that's true. And guys, I'm doing great because the Yankees are bad, and that's okay. We're just a bad team. So put your smiles on. Watch. We'll keep watching, I guess. Don't watch and don't go to the games, please. Please, no one go. But yeah, we're gonna still watch. But yeah, we're gonna be here every week, like you said, Jules, because that's what we do. We perform, and the Yankees don't, and that's okay. All smiles all around.
Well, I know you guys also watch and listen to Yankees content during the week, and today not only is a tough day back at work because it's 4th of July weekend, it's over, so now you're going back to the office if you're in the office, or you have to return to remote work if you're doing that. But I was driving in today, listening to some of these Yankee podcasts, and I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just the malaise from a holiday weekend. But I was like listening to all these different pods and reading all these stats and stuff, and I was so bored. And you know what? That's like the worst thing that the New York Yankees could be. They are boring right now. Forget the fact that they're bad. They suck ass. But, move past that point. And we're just at the point now where it's like, could have watched the games this weekend, but if you didn't, it's like, all right, whatever. You knew what was going to happen, which was them losing 2 out of 3. They had that horrific loss against the Angels, but then they were off for 2 days because of rain. And, it just got to the point where it's like, all right, well, they stunk it up this weekend. And, so that happened. And now they're going on perhaps the most boring thing ever, which is a long West Coast trip in which they play 3 games at 10 o'clock and people have to stay up late to watch.
Yep. I mean, I think we're like, I at least for me anyway, like I'm past the point. Well, I'm still angry. Like, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to always be angry, but I'm at the point
especially
now where
when they lose like how they lost this week.
Yeah. Like when they keep blowing games that they have leads in. But I'm at the point where it's kind of like a little bit indifferent where I'm like, oh, they lost again. Okay. Or like, if I have something to do, I'm not going to take the time out of that plan to make sure I'm sitting and watching the game. If I'm home and it's on, I'm gonna watch it. But it's we're at that point now where the season's half over, and they are what they are, and they are what they've been all year so far, and there's no reason for that to change. So why not? Like, why would you feel anything other than like blah about it?
Yeah, and it's just it's exhausting, right? They've been boring now for some time. And Jules, I think you shared it with our Little Yankees podcast Twitter account. But I've used it now as my main profile avatar on my Twitter. Is you think you hate this team more than I do? Because you don't. Like when opposing, like we have friends that are opposing fans, and like Red Sox fans or Mets fan, whatever. And if they try to comment, we're just like, no, like we agree with you. Like this team is just bad. It's just, and yeah, I'm always going to be angry this weekend on Twitter, but it's like a different type of anger. It's just like, I'm expecting them to blow it. Like it's kind of a spectacle to watch. Like every game that they play, it's like a worse loss than the previous game. And it's actually quite astonishing. It really is. Like you're expecting it, but then when it's actually happening in real time, and then after you're just like, wow, that was like that Chapman blown save last week when I kept messaging you guys, and it's just like, well, Chapman, here we go, up 4. He walked the first batter. Oh, he walked the second batter. Oh, he's the faces of it. Then when he hit the grand slam, I just sat in my and I was just like, yeah, that was gonna happen. And then of course it just unraveled by then. And then yeah, man, it's just every week we're left speechless with what else do we have to say about this team. But
It's
we're gonna try to do it because that's our job.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like the over under on the season right now might have been like what 7.5 in terms of like wins that you could have said was the worst loss of the Yankees season at this point. At first, it was like the loss that they had against Atlanta where Glaber didn't run out the grounder, and you're like, all right, that's the worst loss of the Yankees season. And then you go ahead a little bit more, and it was losing the entire series against Detroit, worst loss of the Yankees season. Then getting swept by Boston, worst the first time, for worst loss of the Yankees season, and then getting swept by Boston the second time with Cole giving you an absolute dud on the mound, and then twice in the span of the week, essentially identical losses, where the team scores 7 runs against Shohei Ohtani in the first inning against Anaheim, then the 2 rain delays, which screws everything up, and people went to bed. I went to bed at that point. I wasn't staying up after the second rain delay, and then watching it back, because that's what I did the next morning when E-Ray lost his shit and messaged us and was like, I can't believe they blew that. Chapman walks the bases loaded, gives up the grand slam, you give up 11 runs and lose. And you say, how can it get any worse? And then you get a carbon copy of that game, throwing in the Garrett Cole sucks angle from the Boston loss that you had. And it happens against the Mets. And that's what you got on Saturday. And the only thing that probably lessened the blow a little bit, and it didn't for me, but I'm sure there are Yankee fans out there who, it works with their agenda of saying that this team is pretty good, is that they won the second game of a doubleheader. And, 75% of the time or more, you have the team split those doubleheaders anyway. So, yeah, the Yankees are technically not 500 right now. They're a game over. And they technically were able to win the third game of that series against the Mets rather than getting swept. But for a week that had 2 of the most soul-crushing losses that you have ever seen, we just keep finding new lows when it comes to saying worst loss of the Yankees year.
Yeah, and I will say that, you can also throw in the first game of the Royals series in there. We're probably missing some others.
The Twins, which Chapman blew it in like
Twins,
3
that
minutes.
was the first time he. But it's interesting too, because like last week, not only were all these games unfolding the way they unfolded, but we also had, Hal Steinbrenner talk to the media and blame the players. We had Brian Cashman come onto the field before one of the games and say, we suck right now. We had Aaron Judge hold the players only meeting, and you see how they respond. And this has constantly been a theme throughout, this year and in previous years. When they face adversity, they don't rise to the occasion. They fall farther, they fall deeper into the abyss. And, it sounds crazy, but I'm not going to lie. On Sunday, after they lost Saturday's game and then lost the first game of the doubleheader Sunday, I actually kind of was rooting for them to lose the third game, because I know that we've heard, all the endorsements for Boone and Cashman, but I'm sorry, if they had lost at home to the Mets in a sweep, I do believe something could have happened.
Yeah.
And I was hoping for that, because I'm fed up. I've had it. And the only way that this is going to change is if they don't perform. So I was rooting for it. And I listen, I'm not going to complain that they won. I still am a Yankee fan. I still want them to turn this around. I'm hoping for a miracle starting tomorrow. But to be realistic, tonight. To be realistic, it's not coming. And so that's why I'm saying to myself, okay, well, changes need to be made. How's the quickest way that's going to happen? By losing. And I hate that I'm at this point, because the other 2 teams I root for, the Jets and the Knicks, I root for them to lose all the time because they always suck. And, now I'm sitting here doing it with the team that I always expect to be in the hunt every year. And it's just wild to me how this is flipped on its head. Out of the 3 teams I root for, the Knicks are the closest team I have to winning a title, which is a joke. So
imagine telling yourself that back in March 2020, a year from now.
I couldn't have even imagined it in April when the baseball season had already started and the Knicks were in the playoffs. So it's just wild.
And even if you had said that, odds are you probably would have thought that meant Michael Jordan came back and decided to play for the Knicks,
or some crazy scenario happened where it's Lillard and Kawhi decided to team up with the Knicks.
It's not that the Yankees just shit the bed.
Exactly.
Or it's the Yankees, all our players got hurt again. And struggling to keep afloat here, but that's not the case, guys. All our players are healthy and they're bad. Like, they just suck.
That brings me to a great point, Ray, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the players' meeting that we heard Josh mention there.
I wish I was in
after that meeting. They scored, what was it, like a 10 plus runs, or in like 2 or 3 of the games straight. They went off offensively. The players who were hitting woke up, but that's how you know this team is so badly constructed, and that Cashman did really just a dog shit job when it came to putting it together, because now that the sticky stuff is gone, you can see that a lot of these pitchers are struggling. Their bullpen has not been the same as it was back when it was getting guys out earlier in the year and the offense was struggling. It seems as though Chapman is just not a good pitcher anymore, whether he was using the spider tack or just like the rosin sunscreen combination. That's why he was sweating all the time. Whatever it was, he can't find home plate. So he has no faith in his fastball. It has low velocity now. So he stinks. And we really have to question whether or not we got bamboozled and sold a bill of goods from Garrett Cole, because 3.1 innings, having a 4-1 lead, not being able to get out of the 4th inning against the Mets in a 7-inning doubleheader is inexcusable for your ace. So now the pitching is toast. So just when the offense starts to turn around, the pitching stinks, and they still can't play well defensively, and they're still dog shit situationally. So that's all you need to know, that even when the thing that came around the most that we needed to see from this team, them to get hits, them to start hitting home runs, them to start getting runs in games and knocking pitchers out of games, everything else falls apart.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this on that's the Cole situation. It's, it's fair now to question. I mean, you have to ask the questions, because what we've seen since the rule has been enforced, or that they announced that they would start enforcing it, has not been pretty. And we've had some good, and then we've had mostly bad. So I'm not going to say that I think that this investment is the worst investment in the history of baseball. First of all, for one thing, you can't blame the Yankees for it. You can't blame the player for it, because as we know, he wasn't the only one that was doing this. And if the Yankees didn't offer him the money, some other team would have. And it's just bad luck and bad timing to just compound the problems that we already have on the team. It's like, of course, this would happen now when we're already in the middle of this garbage. So, like, we have to see it play out a little bit more. We have to give him the rest of the year, in my opinion, to see what exactly this is. But it's not a good situation because of how much money they've invested in him and how long the contract is for. Like, if this guy is the Pittsburgh version of himself, that's a problem. If he is somewhere,
he did have one good year though. He had a great year.
But if he
we didn't pay for that. Yeah.
We didn't pay for that. If he's not, and I will never expect him to be Houston level again, even with spider tack, just because of how just crazy dominant he was. But if he's a little bit below that and still, pitching to an ERA under 3, like, I'm fine with it. I'll live with that. Like, maybe the strikeout numbers won't make your eyes bulge out of your head, but I could live with that.
He was Houston Cole, for April and May of this year,
and he was
now in
June.
TV. Yep, and June he had what? I think the stat was a 5 ERA since in all the starts since June 3rd.
I think it was over 5. Yeah.
So that's what stinks is and I agree with you, Josh. I think they have to wait a bit, because at the end of the day, it's like, to have pitchers all of a sudden have to reinvent themselves mid-season after they had been using it, and we heard about what the Yankees were putting into their stuff. It stinks, but here's the thing. I definitely expected him to be Houston Cole, because at the end of the day, he was Houston Cole.
Yeah, well, that's what we paid
2 months
for
of this year.
That's what we paid for. So that's what the expectation had to be. And even without all this spider tack, all that, whatever, in a game like this where you have a doubleheader, it's 7 innings, you kind of give him the ball and expect him to pitch a complete game. And if you have a 4-1
the inning before he imploded,
and if you have a 4-1 lead, you really expect him to carry you to a win. And that's the issue more than anything else, is the fact that you gave him a lead and he blew up again, the second straight time. So now the one thing that wasn't a question mark is a question mark.
Yep.
And I mean, there's so many different problems that you don't even know where to begin anymore. And it's like, you heard Hal Steinbrenner say, like, oh, I would absolutely consider going over the luxury tax. It's like you're saying that, but you also know damn well that there are so many holes on the team that there's not one player or one trade that you can make that's going to solve and fix everything. Like there are trades that you can make that are going to maybe, win you an extra couple games. But at this point, with the amount of holes that they have, it's like you're not exceeding the luxury tax and you only said that because you know that the solutions are not available to you right now. And so it's just like at this point, it's like, all right, well, we have all these problems. Like the direction to go in, I've made up my mind. I want them to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jules or someone asked this question like 4 weeks ago, right? And 4 weeks ago, I mean, it was different. We were still bad, but there was time to like buy players. That's when they should have bought. But now, like, there's no point of going over the tax at all because that only, I feel like, hurts them because the only way to salvage this team is sell some pieces and then have the luxury tax reset and use their money to kind of cover up all the holes of this roster because that's the only thing they can do because they don't develop players and players regress. So yeah, I'm team sell too. Now, who do you sell? That's a question for all of us and for the Yankees front office to think about. But yeah, at this point, I feel like this season is toast. I mean, we're playing our biggest series tonight against the Seattle Mariners because we're tied with the Seattle Mariners for the wild card spot. We have the Angels on our asses. We were making jokes about them 3 weeks ago, and now we're the ones crying and laughing.
We're the joke.
We're the joke. We're the joke now. So, man, it's a whole thing. But yeah,
it's funny because with how bad this Yankees team is and how they're 500 or a game above 500 essentially at the midway point of the season. I feel like maybe casual Yankee fans, casual baseball fans, or casual sports fans might say to yourself, wow, when's the last time the Yankees were this bad? And the answer is 2016. So it's not surprising that you, Josh, E-Ray, myself are like, this team should sell because the last time they were this bad, less than a decade ago, 5 years ago at this point, they sold. And they have pieces to sell, maybe not as many that they did last time out. And I'm not going to be like, oh, sell Aaron Judge because he's your best player. You don't want to do that. But, there are guys that they should sell. And I think that's an interesting transition point for this discussion that we're going to have now. You talk about them developing players. You talk about them players having regression. I think the one person that I would go out there and sell, if you can get somebody at the deadline for him, is Luke Voit. The reason I say Luke Voit is because all offseason we talked about Luke Voit is a guy that the Yankees are going to have to sell if they want to open up their infield and they want to figure out what they're doing. So the one guy that we're trying to fix here, the one guy who, even though the stats say he might need to be fine where he is Gleyber Torres. I read a stat today. Gleyber Torres has a lower exit velo than Brett Gardner. Excuse me. Let me find the trash can because I have to barf after hearing that. Just one of those. That's it. That's what I have to do because of hearing that stat. That is unacceptable for a guy who 2 years ago was what, a 30 and 100 guy?
38 home runs. I don't think he had 100 RBIs, but yeah.
So 38 home runs in and of itself. And now he has a lower exit velo than Brett fucking Gardner. So to me, the only plausible solution to try and fix this guy is to move him to second base. I don't care what the defensive metrics say. I don't care that he apparently is a better fielder than Francisco Lindor, who we've all talked about as being a great option at shortstop. Moving this guy to second base, to me, has the same sort of effect that helping Gary through those issues at catcher were doing. So I think trading Luke Voit opens that up. It gives you the opportunity to trade a guy who is a power hitting first baseman and would probably get you some prospects and get you some talent. You'd be able to move Gleyber back to second base so you can know if that is what is fucking with him. And you can bring up Park, who we've said before deserves to have major league time. His stats for the last 2 months were fantastic down in AAA. I'm done dragging my feet on Odor because he's free. And I'm done dragging my feet on the idea of not selling. So for me, that opens it up. You get pieces back by selling Voit. You get a chance to try and work Glaber through his issues by putting him back to where we know he was good. And you get to see what you have from a AAA option before you go out there and spend the money we want them to spend on a guy like Corey Seager.
I mean, I'll say this. I think they blew the Voit thing. I think they should have traded him in the offseason when he was coming off of 20 homers, 22 home runs, whatever it was last year to lead all of baseball. I think that was the opportunity because listen, the problem that we say we're trying to solve now is the same issue that they needed to solve in the offseason, which was, well, Gleyber Torres should not play shortstop. And also they need left-handed power. And, Voit, I mean, he's a little bit older because he's a late bloomer, but he's been hurt all the time. So he's been injured in 2019. He had an injury last year that he played through, and he's been injured twice already this year. He's, approaching, the arbitration years where he gets a little bit more expensive. So I think this is a guy that makes sense to move. The problem is I don't know that what you can get for him is going to be something that's going to change your franchise. Yeah. But to be honest, at this point, the way that they're going to change their franchise is if they spend more money, because I don't think there's anybody.
And if they get Glaber, right?
Short of Aaron Judge, there's nobody on the roster that you're going to trade that will give you this haul that's going to, possibly change your, the course of your team. And I don't advocate for trading Judge. I would be very annoyed if they did that. But I do agree. I think Voit is somebody who doesn't really fit long term. The way I look at it is they're locked into certain players. They're locked in to DJ and Stanton, and they're locked in to Cole. And I think they're locked in to Judge as well, even though the contract is still up in the air. I still think they should view him as a cornerstone. And they're, at least for now, locked into Chapman because he's pitching terribly and he has a no trade clause. So you have to look at the other players other than those guys, and those are the guys that can be moved. Now that leaves you with guys who necessarily aren't, superstars who are going to change your life if you're the team that's buying them. But those are the guys that you have that are not necessarily expendable, but movable. So I also add Gio Urshela to the list. I love Gio. I don't want to trade him, but he's somebody that may actually get you something in return, but it also opens up another infield position that is another place that you can move DJ LeMahieu to full time. There's a ton of shortstops that are going to be on the market this offseason that the Yankees should be eyeing. Freddie Freeman is a first baseman, obviously left-handed hitter who's about to be a free agent. The Braves are having a bad year. He's not having a good year. Maybe that's not a great investment, but that's something that's definitely worth discussing. So in terms of the offense, those are the two, I guess, parts that I would definitely consider right now. In terms of pitching, I don't really think any of the starters that they have are going to get them anything. So I probably would just ride it out with those guys. And I think, in the bullpen, if Zach Britton gets right and gets healthy, that's somebody you should definitely try to trade. And I also think you could at least explore Loaizaga and Green. Not that that's necessarily a great thing. Like the season may go down the tubes at that point, but listen, this organization is in for they have to overhaul a lot of things, and they have to dig themselves out. And it's not going to take one offseason or one trade deadline. This is a long-term thing that's going to take a couple years to fix. So we might have to get down with a couple ugly years, and I can live with it if it's building for the future and sort of, focusing your attention on 2022. So I think a lot of things have to be on the table. That's kind of where I stand on it. And just to finish it up with this, Gleyber Torres, if he was playing better, obviously we would just want to leave him alone at shortstop. Right now, I'm kind of not necessarily done with him, but I'm losing confidence every single day in that he could turn this around. The fact is, though, the value right now is so low because of how poorly he's played that the Yankees kind of just have to let it rock with him and hope that he can build himself up. And maybe moving him back to second base will click something mentally, give him confidence again to go out and be the hitter that we saw the first two seasons when he was making, putting up historic numbers for rookies and second-year players in Yankee history. That's where I am at on this.
Did you guys see the speaking on Gleyber Torres? Did you see that Fangraphs article a week ago about Gleyber Torres and what's going on? If you haven't, it's fantastic.
I didn't see it.
I'll send you guys the link later. But what they basically broke down everything that's going on with Gleyber Torres, and what it came down to is that he's just not pulling the ball. He's not. He's late on everything. Yeah, he's pulling less, and when he does, he isn't making good contact. We talked about the exit velocity, but after pulling the ball roughly 44% of the time from 2018 to 2020, he's done just 39% of the time since. The drop-off is more significant among fly balls and line drives. He went pull side 32% of the time from 2018 to 2019. Now he's just 24% of the time. And this is like the big thing that I saw in the article. He's hitting just 142 with a 315 slugging percentage on 85 plate appearances, with ending with a four-seam fastball. In 2019, he had 303 and 703 slugging. It's just like, I think this is the thing with Gleyber Torres. I really do think a lot of it is mental, because you see it on the field when he makes an error. Like his
body language sucks.
His body language has changed. And yeah, I do think that switching positions did mess with him. When it comes to Gleyber Torres, man, like I've been doing this whole year, I think we've all have been, we've been blaming, I think it's the organization's fault more. I think they failed this guy. And I think that Gleyber Torres is struggling with the mental fortitude to try to bring himself back up. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to give up on him. And as you guys spoke on it, his value right now is too low, and he is 24 years old. It's just like, where has that guy? Where is that guy that we fell in love with? That was just so, I know the baseball changed and everything, but hopefully maybe like what the Fansgraph article is saying is maybe it is mechanics in a way where he is late, maybe make some tweaks. But at the same time, do I have the confidence that you were saying, Josh, not the confidence in Gleyber himself, but do I have the confidence that the Yankees organization can get this guy back to where he is? Because he has just fallen so far down. I mean, we were talking about this guy. Everyone has. We saw him in the postseason. He's only 22. This guy was being brought up with the big names in baseball, the Tatises, the Acuñas. Like, this guy was so promising. And yeah, last year was really bad, 60-game season, and this year has been even more brutal. I don't want to give up on him yet, and I don't know. It's just like that article is very interesting. It's just, and a lot of things come into play, and I think the Yankees organization has failed him a little bit. But again, it's up to him himself to try to make adjustments and get it going again.
Well, I think that's also why it's kind of frustrating that you haven't seen any changes, even among like some members of the coaching staff. Like, here's the thing: we all beat up Marcus Timms, early in the year when the offense stunk, and now it's finally turning around. But they still hit into a crap ton of double plays. They still have guys offensively who aren't producing, at least mechanically, the way that they did. Yeah, he fixed Gary's swing with the leg kick, but it took, 3 years of Aaron Boone's staff for them to realize that this wasn't the case. And now you tell me a stat like that where you see that Gleyber, who, and I can't stress this enough, has a worse exit velocity than Brett Gardner, is not pulling the ball enough. It's like, to me, that's what's almost so criminal about how long this leash has been with Cashman and Hal for Boone and his staff. And if they're not going to fire Boone, you would hope that they would fire somebody. And I don't know, to me, that just kind of all is wrapped up in this big bow of why it's kind of so important for this team to sell. Because we as fans want to know what the hell we got with the rest of Brian Cashman's bullshit. It's like, I want to see some of these prospects that he has down in AAA that he says aren't good enough to be playing in the majors. And if they're not, then that's an indictment on you. And if they are, and they stink up here or they're great up here, then that's also an indictment on you. So it's like, to me, treading water isn't going to tell me anything I don't already know about how badly constructed this team is. Not selling isn't going to tell me anything I don't already know. Seeing some of these guys in AAA, seeing what sort of hauls they could potentially get back from people, these sort of things are what's going to at least give me some of a clue of what we're doing here. But at the end of the day, none of us, I think, really want Brian Cashman as the GM next year based off of how they're performing and playing right now. And, feeding the bullshit that we hear from Hal about how he's willing to go over the luxury tax, but then doesn't do it every offseason, won't suddenly make us think that even if they fired Boone and changed the approach in the managerial's office, that it wouldn't be the same bullshit as far as them impacting the players on the field anyway.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said it countless times. I just think that this staff, including Cashman, is at the end of its run. I just think that, you have to things obviously need to be shaken up. Actually, to be honest with you, we're past that point. They should have been shaken up a month ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. But, in terms of going forward, because this year's a wash, but in terms of going forward, obviously things need to change. And like we're talking about Glaber, it's like, yeah, I do think a lot of it, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it is mental. I also think it is mechanical because, the numbers would suggest that. Also, if you just watch him, if you use your eyes, he's swinging with all arms. And obviously he's pulling off, like his front hip is coming out. And he's swinging with all arms, and that's why he's late on everything. He can't catch up to anything, and then it's that mixed with the position change, and like Glaber isn't the only one. Clint Frazier's decline makes absolutely no sense after what we saw last year and in previous seasons. At least he showed promise offensively. The defense, other than 2020, was always a problem, but it's like we've seen a lot of regression with these players, so you have to start blaming it on the organization. And if they regressed under this guy's watch, then why would you think it would get any better with the same people in charge? Like, why would you have any confidence that, if Boone returns in 2022, that Glaber is all of a sudden going to turn back into the all-star that he was a couple of years back? It's like, why would you have that thought at all? I certainly wouldn't. And I think as we've been saying for weeks now, it's a top-down issue. It's not just Boone, and it's not just the coaches and the assistants. It's the whole thing, the whole pie is bad. So like Glaber is kind of the face of this whole thing for me, because he was the one that looked to be, among the stars in the game. Like I thought he was going to be better than Aaron Judge, and I thought he was going to be a future MVP. And now, and that was in 2019 when the team won 103 games, won the division, got to, the ALCS.
He was electric
and he was electric in the playoffs. And then ever since last year, and now continuing into this year, the team has struggled. They've regressed. He's regressed. He's the face of this struggle for me, and I don't like it. I want him. We want
him to smile.
I want him to smile. It's much more fun when they're having fun, and they don't have fun. And
is that guy in
who did have fun?
Is that guy still there?
Look at this.
That's what we have to see.
There we go.
Yeah, Ronald Perez. That's right.
Coach having fun in Philadelphia.
I don't know about that.
Here. That's why we need our toe back, baby.
I don't know if the Philadelphians are having fun in Philadelphia.
No, they're not. They suck. But that's okay.
I'm sorry, Jules.
No, I was just gonna say it's all part of the experience.
It's thundering here. I'm scared.
It is. It's while we're recording this, it is.
Speaking of the Yankees breaking me this week, as they break me every weekend, keep getting notifications on. I won't say because people will probably know it's me, but my other
Ray went into business for himself, and rather than help grow the OLIP Twitter account, which he totally could have.
Instead, we just
it's better to be an anti-Yankees Twitter account.
So you can follow E-Ray's All for One and One for All Twitter account.
Maybe not. I don't want to expose myself.
So you don't. All right. Okay.
I'll get followers no matter what, bro.
All right.
But yeah, back to.
Maybe you guys start worrying about your?
I'm on an article trend right now. Did you guys see Sherman's article about the scouting department?
I did.
When was that?
That was yesterday.
No, I was off the grid.
Here's the thing, and this is the truth, and this is what I believe about everything.
Not scouting department, analytics department.
It is a blanket decision. It's something we talked about last week. I think it was on the pod, which is there's nothing wrong with analytics. Analytics are a big, scary word, but at the end of the day, everybody in baseball uses analytics. You can't tell me if the Tampa Bay Rays staff came here with this team and used their analytics and had a $160+ million payroll that we wouldn't be winning 120 games and smoking teams in the playoffs and winning multiple championships. The analytics nerds for the Yankees are stupid. And that's what it boils down to.
It's about the application
the wrong way. They're a case study on how not to use analytics.
They really are.
Let me just say this, and I don't know if this was brought up because I didn't see the article, but I just look at Michael King as the perfect example of this because when he starts, he runs into a lot of trouble in the first inning. His ERA as a starter is close to 5, and as a reliever, it's under 2. So we clearly have something here that has there's evidence that's laid out over, a large enough sample size now to know that this is the reality. The Yankees will last year and even earlier this year would go out of their way to use an opener. And even in 2019, when they did it, they were actually very successful with it when it was Chad Green and Nestor Cortez. So when Michael King, comes in relief the other day against the Mets, he pitches lights out. But when he starts, it's always a run or two in the first inning. There was that one game against Toronto where they actually turned that miraculous triple play that make the numbers even look a little bit better than they probably should be. So we now know that this guy, for whatever the reasons are, struggles in the first inning, probably because he faces the other team's best hitters. So after his last start, whenever that was last week, Aaron Boone, is talking about that. He's like, well, the first three hitters on the other team are pretty good. It's like, well, no shit. So why do we choose to use an opener in some situations when it's maybe not necessary? But then when we have clear evidence of this guy actually performs better as a reliever, probably because he doesn't have to face the top of the order and maybe doesn't face the order more than one time, why are we not applying this strategy with this player? We can actually put him in position to excel. That I know with the Yankees that is something that they are really against. They don't like to put their players in the best position to succeed. But it's like, why doesn't this happen? And it doesn't matter anymore, because even if they start doing it this week, it's not like they're going to go out and all of a sudden win the AL East. But it's just like, this type of stuff is stupid. And we have examples of it. It's not just words that are being written by Joel Sherman or things that we're saying here that it's like, oh, they don't apply the analytics correctly. Just look at that as the evidence. It's an easy situation to try to fix, but instead they continue to run the same crap out there. And that permeates through the whole organization. As we've been saying, they can't accept the failure. They can't accept how poorly, run and how poorly they play. It's always, we're going to continue to do it this way because we believe finally, eventually things will change. The players feel the same way too, because we know based on how they act that they think that something is going to switch that's going to turn them back into the all-star team that they were 2 years ago. It's like, we know that this is how it is. Why don't we use the information that we have in front of us, the clear-cut evidence, to try to make this situation better and different? And this is the issue.
It's to the point where they actually get in their own way of wins in order to potentially win other games. Look at what Aaron Boone literally did in game one of the doubleheader. Chad Green threw 2 pitches, and then they brought in Chapman, who stunk.
And he wanted to have to worry about
and he said it wasn't even like, no, Chapman's the closer. It was like straight up, oh, well, we wanted to use Chad in game 2. Bro, you're winning game 1. Forget about game 2.
He did the same thing last week. What scenario was it last week? He did the same thing.
I'll tell you,
like, you got to win this game. Like, what do you?
It was when he sat Judge and Gio, and he said, I have to think about the big picture. Well, the season's half over. So isn't the big picture the fact that you're barely over 500? You're barely in the wild card hunt. That's the big picture. You need these games. You need these games.
Think about that. If they had won that game, they would have been 42-40. Instead, they had the same record that they had entering that game because they lost. It's simple mathematics.
Well,
eventually, you're going to run out. And what did Herm Edwards say? You play to win the game, not you play to win the next game. That's what it is. You play to win the game, Aaron Boone, and the analytics staff. And they're idiots. And I'm sure analytics goes into why they kept Justin Wilson on the roster when they sent Tyler Wade down, when they could have DFA'd Justin Wilson, who straight up sucks. He sucks ass. And instead, despite having a 10 o'clock game and then being able to go through the whole process, they sent a guy down who actually creates runs for them in favor of Wandy Peralta when they could have then just sent down Justin Wilson, who is literal garbage.
And we don't even like Tyler Wade, but he is so far removed from being the problem that it's not even funny. Like, and I'm not going to sit here and like get into a whole thing about that because whatever, but it's just in general, the overall issue is the decisions are mind boggling. And it's like, okay, we've seen them demote Chapman before when he's had rough stretches. Why is he still continuing to close the games?
He does this every year.
I mean, it seems worse now.
This one's worse.
So even more reason to to say, okay, we're gonna put you in some lower leverage situations. For now, we're gonna have Chad or Loizaga close, or Britton when he comes back, and it's just it makes no sense to me, and it's a continuing trend.
The guy, the name of the guy who runs the analytic department, Mike Fishman.
Mike Fishman.
Yeah. I want him out. No, but he's not going to go anywhere. But I think he even said in this article, Jules, if I'm not mistaken, I think he even said yeah, Aaron Boone uses like the info we give him, but he's the one that makes the lineups and everything.
On the back page of like the NY Post, it even talks about how he.
Oh, it said that?
No, no, not that, but it said how like Fishman said that like their analytics are great, and
No, the one I want to give one quote where it turns into what we've been saying from this article from Sherman. Is it possible, though, that the Yankees remain stuck on a philosophy of how to generate the greatest run differential, and that other analytic departments recognize, for example, that speed or contact or being able to think and play at a high level simultaneously were attributes that were needed to go along with power? I have, for example, always wondered if the Yanks are trailblazers in analytics, or simply if they are what is working in the moment and then put their manpower and finances behind that, leaving them one step behind and figuring out what is next. When I read that quote, or when I hear that quote, it's the arrogance of the Yankees, which we keep talking about. It just comes down to that. They're set in their ways. They don't want to change anything.
I'll never forget it. The book that came out right after Joe Girardi got fired, Josh, you have a copy of it, and we've had the chance to read it. It talks about Brian Cashman and this idea that he wants to be the Kansas City Royals or whatever it is, that he almost scoffs at the ability to spend the money. And I feel like for Hal, it's perfect because you don't have to give teams other money. You don't have to spend all your money. You can still give a good payroll, but you don't have to go over to finance. And for a guy like Cashman, when it works, it gives him an opportunity to look like he's the smartest guy in the room. And for a while, whether it was Gio or Voits or a guy like Didi, who everybody, said, oh, that's crazy for him to be the next shortstop of the Yankees after Jeter, it paid off good. But now it just pays off like an idiot because the team you put together, you can't fix without money, and you have hampered yourself in your ability to spend it.
I think that says it perfectly. That quote from the article, and Jules, your point after that's it. That's what it is. And it's like the arrogance, the set in their ways, the stubbornness, the inability to pivot and think that possibly maybe some decisions were not correct. Like, you have to be willing in any job, you have to be willing to admit fault and recognize that maybe something wasn't done correctly. And I feel that way with this team. It's like, we know it, the evidence is clear, but maybe when you're in it, it's so hard to see that, the missteps that you took. But when you're removed from it, like we are, and we just follow along, you can see like, okay, well, here was an issue, there was an issue, this is another problem. And all of a sudden it builds up to something that you can't recover from by just making one or two changes or moves. It becomes a problem that you have to tear down and rebuild from there. And I'm not saying rebuild the team where they have to trade everyone, but I'm saying
they're not going to do that.
They're not, and they shouldn't, because they're the Yankees and they should never retool. They need to retool. That's what it is.
And for me, I think I am at the point now where it's like Cashman gave us a lot. He's been the GM for a while, but I am ready to move on. At a certain point, it's not just about, oh, fuck this guy because we suck ass right now. No, Brian Cashman could come out at the end of the year and say, we're going to go sign a bunch of people and we're going to get lefty bats and we're going to go out there and do it. But that's what they did after 2009. And that didn't stop him 5-10 years later from giving us a bad product based off of arrogance and the lack of desire to conform to what baseball was giving you because you got too lost in your own sauce. And that, to me, is why 2 months ago I made the analogy about Lou Lamoriello. And it's why I think that analogy and our thoughts on Brian Cashman ring as true today on July 6th as they did on May 6th, which is at a certain point, you just got to take out the trash. And it doesn't matter how good that trash might have been to you beforehand. you eventually just got to do it. You got to part ways.
Yeah.
I just don't see. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I think if they don't make the playoffs, Aaron Boone hopefully will go. Even though there was an article with Andy Martino that said some other different shit.
I mean, him and Boob are
yeah, amazing. But yeah, I don't know if Cashman's gonna go. But yeah, man, we're gonna wait and see. I'm focused on the freaking trade deadline now, and if they don't sell anyone, I'm gonna be pissed because I can't do shit anymore.
I want to say too, because we were talking about this before and I kind of lost my train of thought, and I think it should be brought up. Last week, or no, it was the doubleheader. I think it was in between the games. Boone said, we're kind of piecing things together today, pitching wise, but you had, or maybe it was Saturday, but whatever it was over the weekend. And it was after,
I think it was in between the doubleheaders.
So you had 2 days off. You had Thursday and Friday off because of rain, both nights. And then, you have the one game on Saturday against the Mets. And he's saying we had to piece it together today. It's like, how are you piecing it together when you had all these, you had 2 days off? Like, you're not piecing anything together. And this is an issue that actually dates back to 2018, specifically the game against the Red Sox in the wild card series when they got destroyed and he brought Lance Lynn in the game with the bases loaded, a guy who's usually a starting pitcher. The Yankees script everything. They say, like, okay, in this situation against these hitters, we're bringing this guy in. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But the game has a heartbeat. And a lot of times you have to adjust and you can't just follow blindly along with what you hoped would happen beforehand. So, like, that was a bad decision that completely backfired on them and made no sense whatsoever. And people didn't second guess it. They first guessed it when it happened. As soon as they brought Lynn in, people were saying, why? And now this isn't as drastic because it's not a playoff game and it's not a do or die situation.
And they fucking suck.
Yeah, and they suck. The season is probably a wash at this point. But similar thing happens over the weekend with, the Chapman thing and the Green thing. It's like, we know, like, there's problems here. Like, let's not just blindly be dumb. Like, let's try to focus on the game at hand. The problem is when you look at the big picture too much, or you worry about the next day, you lose the day that you have on your hands. And when you're in the situation the Yankees are in right now, you can't really be doing that. And that's not just the Boone thing. It goes back to what we were saying before. It's not just the Boone thing. This is a Mike Fishman thing. This is a Brian Cashman thing. This is
there's a guy at the deli with the Gita Jamboree thing.
A nameless, faceless Yankee nerd thing. Like, this is what they do. And so, yeah, like Lou Lamoriello said, sometimes, I don't know if he actually said this, but sometimes you just need to change.
I don't know if he did either, but we can say he did. And here's the thing. He turned out great. He was mediocre for a year or two with Toronto, but the Islanders are lit now. Change the scenery helps. I don't think Brian Cashman is like the worst GM of all time. He clearly isn't. I just think he is too close to the pot now. And you got to throw him out because at the end of the day, you're just
going to get another job.
Yeah,
he's a good GM. He's going to get another job.
There's no doubt about it. And that's why I'm not like super concerned about it. But like Brian Cashman gave himself absolute power within the organization. At this point, he can make any move he wants. He built his analytics staff in direct idea of what he wanted. And he hired a manager who has no experience, but due to that lack of experience, cannot question his absolute word. And you can believe that whether or not you want to as a Yankee fan, but that's the truth. If Brian Cashman says to Aaron Boone, I want this done, maybe Boone will say, well, I really think we should do this. But like what he says goes. We're not a bunch of idiots. And that was why they got rid of Joe Girardi. And that was why they didn't really go after a manager who probably would have directly objected. And it's probably the reason why a guy like Kevin Cash or a guy like AJ Hinch or a guy like Joe Madden or any of these big-time, long-standing managers who do well with analytics would not do well here with the New York Yankees. So it's as simple as that. But at the end of the day, that's why you know that Cashman just does not fit here anymore. Doesn't mean he won't fit in baseball. Doesn't mean he won't get a job. E-Ray's spot on. He'll get a job probably really quick. But
he'll probably do well
with the Yankees.
And next year they might go over the luxury tax again because it might reset and they might get some players that we want. But at the same time, and it might work out, but it might not work out because, like, again, he got the big free agent in Garrett Cole. We needed him, but I feel like in other opportunities, this is on Hal too now because he's the one that makes the decision whether to go over the tax. But there's, of course, in the last few years, there's been situations where we're right there and they don't go over the tax in that certain year, whether it's Justin Verlander or whether it's before this season where they wanted to bring back the same team, but we had some free agents, some lefty bats or something, some other pitchers where we could have salvaged the season a little better. Probably, man. I couldn't have predicted that. I mean, Will didn't predict it was going to be this bad.
For what it's worth, that's the reason why what Hal said earlier this week was complete and utter bullshit. It's like, oh, I'm always looking for deals to be able to go to the tax Y. All right, well, you couldn't have brought back Tanaka, so you had another starter here.
Yeah, you could have signed Nolan Brantley.
You couldn't have signed Michael Brantley or Kyle Schwarber to help you out. You couldn't have done more than just, piecing together some guys with Band-Aids because we all know, or I don't know, not giving DJ the extra year. So that way you would have to not worry about years down the line. You just had to worry about your annual, luxury tax hit. It's like, that's the coach speak that you just say to yourself, that's a crock of shit.
And I was going to say, you brought the names up. Like apparently the rumor is Brantley and Schwarber were both interested in coming to the Yankees because they were both perfect fits for the team's needs and the holes that were needed to be filled that the Yankees straight up didn't fill and ignored. And so, okay, you're willing to consider going over the luxury tax in July, but not in December and November and January when you can actually solve more problems because you have more time and you have more money available. Theoretically, you have more money available because you didn't sign any other free agents yet. It's like, this is just stupid. And we're not dumb. Like we can read between the lines, we can connect the dots and put the puzzle together without necessarily them needing to tell us and hold our hand. Like we know what's going on. We're not dumb. So stop acting like it.
Odor.
There it is. It's like, that's it. You're not willing to go over the luxury tax because you got rid of 3 players to pigeonhole this guy onto your roster who can only play one position. So he can't really be a backup. So now he just stands on the bench and like gives guys hugs and high fives and stuff. It's like,
hey, he's a great high fiver, I have to say.
Good for him.
You're just saying that because he's a bald man like you.
No, well, bald people are good high fivers. What can you say? No,
there you go.
He has good energy on the bench, but I don't give a fuck.
It doesn't matter.
I don't care. No. Trust me, I don't give a shit.
The fact
is, it's clearly not helping.
I bet you Michael Brantley, who we see all the time, like absolutely charging up the Houston Astros offense, could have been a good man on the bench, but they would have had to pay him what? Probably $10 million a year, more or less.
Yeah,
maybe more.
Probably more, but whatever. Who cares?
And let's not forget the fact that he's a lefty, and therefore they can't use him because he's a good lefty. They need bad lefties.
Because good
lefties
I would
cost think money. I would hope that next year they would get some lefties. You would.
I think so. I think they will.
Like I think it's time. Like
I want the lefties to be purchased and put on this roster by somebody not named Brian Cashman, because that full circle goes back to what I said, which is Josh said it before. In 08, they stunk. People didn't go to the ballpark, so they went out there and they spent. And that's fine. That will fix our Band-Aid issue for right now. And maybe they'll get back to being the worst 100-win team we've ever seen.
Hey, as long as it gives us one title, I'll take it.
But I want multiple titles with the opportunity to know that we are going in the right direction. And the core is there for me that if they brought in somebody halfway decent to be their GM next year, they probably will make the playoffs and do a good job. But if it's just a spending spree with Cashman and he's not actually correcting his mistakes, he's just going out there and covering up some of them, I don't think that's going to be enough, because the mistakes that are on this team right now are going to need a lot more than I think $100 million worth just to cover it up. You have 4 starters who are not good behind Garrett Cole. You have a bullpen that is getting older now, and Chapman, your closer, and Britton, your young guy. The only guy on the bullpen you could really say is like next level and young is Johnny Loaizaga. And most of your lineup is pretty much makeshift, and a lot of it is injury prone.
And there's also things that we don't see that are part of the issue, that part of why this is all, going bad. It's the player development stuff that we've talked about. And like, we don't really need to get in depth on it, but like, that's another thing that's a problem that, if it wasn't an issue, if you have injuries, if you have underperformance, there are guys that in AAA, whatever, that are ready and probably capable of taking the place and filling in and doing a good job. But the Yankees don't have that. And they haven't had that because that's just not something that this front office has excelled at. So like you said, Jules, like the money will only go so far. Yes, it will improve the major league roster in the now, but that doesn't also, necessarily guarantee you anything in the future. And we should know that better than a lot of fan bases because we've seen them throw money at players and we've seen it not lead to anything in the now or in the future. And so, yeah, like you can't just like, you're going to sell, you will sell people. Like if they go out this offseason and they sign Corey Seager or Freddie Freeman, like you'll
sell me.
You'll sell some fans on that. And like people will be excited, and as they should, because those guys are all-star players. And, Freddie Freeman won the MVP last year, but that also won't change the fact that when those guys approach their, mid to late 30s, when they're signed under contract, eventually you're going to need somebody who's younger and cheaper to take their place. And that has been an issue for a long time.
That's future E-Ray's problem, though, remember?
But future E-Ray's problem became current E-Ray's problem.
Yep,
I know.
So you're right.
I want them to be the Padres, and there's no reason that they can't. The Padres dropped $300 million on Manny Machado. They were able to bring in a big marquee free agent, and then they were able to develop young guys like Fernando Tatis, who, of course, they didn't draft, but they got him in a trade, and they're able to have all these young group of players. They brought in what's his face too? Eric Hosmer, another big free agent that they were able to sign. So they had the money to do it, and they have the prospects to do it. And their farm system, I'm pretty sure, is still the best in baseball.
It's near the top.
Yeah, Yankees have not developed grade A farm talent since the core four in the 90s, and that was Gene Stick Michael, and it wasn't Brian Cashman. It was 30 years ago. And
all you need to know were at the top a few years ago.
The one.
But those were guys that they traded for.
Well, let me get my. You literally are playing into my point. That literally, they were supposed to be the Padres when they had the baby bombers. They were supposed to be that. They had all these guys that came over 2016 and 2017. They're a year ahead of the curve. Look at all these guys they have there, and they all fizzled out. Now, ending with Glaber and Clint and Andujar, who the three of them can't get out of their own way, and we don't even know what's up with Glaber anymore. I want prospects that are going to pan out. I want a team that's going to spend money. And in this day and age where the Dodgers do it and are competitive and the Padres do it and are competitive and the Red Sox are apparently going to start doing it and are competitive, you can do that.
We have a lineup, folks.
All right, so hit us with it. By the way, we are recording this on July 6th at 6:50. So the Yankees play on the West Coast in Seattle at 10 o'clock. We won't know the results tomorrow when you hear the podcast, but you will know that there was a lineup that got played, or maybe you won't. But E-Ray, tell us what the lineup is.
Well, I didn't. Me.
You said you had a lineup. Oh my God, why'd you bring it up then?
I had it, but now it's gone. Anyway, they're facing
good radio, folks.
Yes.
We're live, folks. No, they're facing what's his name? Sheffield.
Justice Sheffield.
He's gonna kick our ass.
He actually, I saw a bunch of people sharing the different sliders that they have with different analytics and different sabermetric stats out there. He is very high in exit velo and hard hit and BWA plus or whatever the hell that gimmick is. So it would suggest on paper that the Yankees should demolish this guy, but knowing how they face young, impressive pitchers, they will have Justice Sheffield throw at least 6 no-hit innings against them tonight.
Not to mention he's a lefty against a heavily right-handed lineup, but the Yankees don't really hit lefties well either anymore, so who knows?
They don't hit anything well. And I do have the lineup now, folks. We got DJ LeMahieu leading off, Aaron Judge at second, Gary Sanchez batting third, Giancarlo Stanton cleanup, Luke Voigt fifth, Gio Urshela sixth, Gleyber Torres seventh, Miguel Andujar eighth, and Tim LeCastro ninth.
So there you go, Tim LeCastro. I don't think we had a chance to discuss that last week, but he's here now.
He looks. He's more athletic. Yeah, I'll say that.
Pretty good. I thought he played a pretty good outfield in the Mets series. Here's the thing: at this point, their outfield is literally just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks, because Clint hasn't stuck and Duhar's a terrible fielder. Brett Gardner is way past his prime and he has to retire at the end of this year. And Tim Castro is now going to be the next man up. That Mike Tauchman trade really, maybe he wouldn't have done anything, but really looks like.
Yeah, I don't know. I know. Early. I mean, because he's a lefty and we needed outfields, and
I think it seems as though they jumped the gun too quick. I don't think their bullpen was in as much dire need of Wandy Peralta as they kind of made it seem like at the time. And I don't think Tauchman was as expendable as it looks now, because at the end of the day, at least you kind of knew what you're going to get with him, and they needed him desperately. That's why they had to make that trade for a guy like Tim Castro. Yeah,
but what I'll say is that like Tauchman's numbers with the Giants are even worse than they were. Not necessarily worse, but they're not good. Like he's hitting under 200. He has 15 RBIs in 52 games, like 4 homers. His on-base percentage is under 300. Like the numbers are bad. And yeah, he was a body. They needed a body. They needed a guy who could play center field. And but the problem is that he was so bad last year and started off bad this year that maybe the Yankees thought, like, if we don't trade him now, like we will get somebody who's not even as good as Wandy Peralta, who isn't even that good. But if the Yankees believe that Peralta could turn into something, like it made sense to do it. And then of course the thing that happened right after was Hicks got hurt. So it made it look worse, but like the numbers back up the trade. Like Tauchman was bad and he's still bad.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And I hated him. That's all I have to say.
Anyway, Yankees now have their upcoming schedule in front of us. We mentioned the games against Seattle, and then they have a 3-game series at Houston. Man, you want to talk what really could just be worst case scenario. It's a Houston team who your fan base literally clowned when they came to your house. You beat 2 out of 3. You looked like the season was on the up and up. And now you have to go to Houston, where the Astros are probably going to be licking their chops for an opportunity to bash your brains in. So this week,
they're team.
They're good. They have this week has a potential to be super bad if the Yankees
say that every week.
But this one more than other ones, because look, here's the thing: there's no competition anymore for the Yankees to play down to. Seattle is in theory the same as them. So if they stink, it's just because the Yankees stink, and you could see them just mail it in and go 0-6. And honestly, I would not be shocked if they got swept.
I'll also say this: Garrett Cole is going to pitch in that series, and that should be very interesting to see how that all goes for him. That has disaster potential written all over it.
I'm expecting the worst.
As does this whole weekend, as you said. So
it will be
interesting. I'm expecting the worst starting tonight.
Yes. Gut record after this week. You got a 3-game set against the Mariners starting tonight, Tuesday, July 6th. And then you got a 3-game set against Houston before a 4-game series against the Red Sox. So we'll do the 6 games.
2 and 4, I'll say. I actually think that they may win the Seattle series. I think they'll probably get swept by Houston.
I want to say 2 and 4 as well. But now I look like Josh.
Say 1 and 5.
That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say 1 and 5.
I'm not going to say 6.
I have no faith. I could see them come out tonight, West Coast. They had a long plane ride, come out and have a victory tonight with that full lineup. But, eventually you're going to get personal catcher Higgy out there for Cole. You're going to get some rest days in there because Stanton's played a bunch of days in a row. They haven't given him a day off in a while. So that's ripe for either an injury or an off day at this point. And then the rest of the team just hasn't figured it out enough for me to think that it
Imagine
works.
They do this.
If they're going to run Chapman out there as their closer too right now with the way he is, that has potential to get bad too. So I think 1 and 5.
Or the Yankees will do this. They'll win 2 out of 3 against Seattle, and they somehow shockingly win 2 out of 3 against Houston.
And they get swept by Boston.
2. They're 4 and 2, and then it's like, oh my God, they just won a great game against the Astros on Sunday afternoon game. Gotta go. All right, then you got Red Sox. So
yeah, it's true. Yeah, you're probably right. And then they'll get swept by Boston, which has literally been their catalyst this year. But at this point, it'll be impossible to see. A little bit of last-minute housekeeping for you guys. Hilarious that it happened this way, but Yankees have 3 All-Stars. Aaron Judge, fan vote, made sense. He's the best player. He's the right fielder, so no surprise there. And then Garrett Cole and Aroldis Chapman both voted to the All-Star game as reserves because of how great their first half of the year really was. But it also happened to come on the day that we found out where Aroldis Chapman blew the 9th inning lead against the Mets, and then he stunk. And then Garrett Cole wasn't able to go 4 innings against the Mets and got pulled in that game. So ironic, but the Yankees have 3 All-Stars.
It was great comedic timing. I'll say that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's the only thing the Yankees are pretty much good at this point this year: comedic timing and denying themselves wins.
I hate them.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, me too.
My Papa of the week, I'm going to give to. Did I give it to him last week? I got it. I'm going to give it to Nestor Cortez. I think I gave
No, you did not give it to Nestor Cortez.
Okay, I didn't. I'm going to give it to him, though, baby. Or Chad Green. They're both. Can I do co-papas?
Yeah, sure.
Why don't you give Chad?
Yeah, I'm going to switch it up. I'm giving co-papas.
You know, you have to save some of those innings for Chad Green. You might as well do it next week's Papa of the Week. You know?
You're right. No, okay.
The Aaron Boone approach.
Well, I might take the Aaron Boone approach. It's a good foul. So I'm going to give it to Nestor Cortez. And then Chad Green's traded, and then I'll give him Papa of the Week when he's on the freaking, I don't even know.
Oh, and we just lost Pop of the Week because we should have had Chad Green in there. See?
You see?
Oh, brutal.
Yeah, we're getting ready for Aaron Boone's presser.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so Yankees play tonight. We won't have the update for that, but hopefully you'll be enjoying a Yankees win while you listen to this tomorrow on your commute or at work or whatever it is that you usually listen. But should be exciting stuff. Boys, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No. Let's just see how this all goes.
Yep. It's a good motto to live by, right?
It is what it is. What was the Yankees motto? It's just not working, right?
It's not working.
It's not working.
Or classic, it's not what you want. That was my favorite.
It's not what you want.
The old Joe Girardi motto. It's not what you want, and it hasn't been all season. That's going to do it for us here inside our little Yankees podcast. As always, you can listen to us wherever you'll find podcasts. That includes Spotify podcasts, Apple podcasts. We're on TuneIn and, of course, SoundCloud. We also have our own YouTube page at Our Little Yankees Podcast. We put every episode live up there as we record it, so you can see our beautiful faces while we record OLIP. And then, of course, you can give us a Twitter follow, Our Little Yanks Pod, OurLilyanKSPod. E-Ray's got to start running that Yankees, Our Little Yanks Twitter account because he's apparently the Twitter maestro. So we'll see if he actually can put the reins out there, but we'll see. For now, though, Yankees have a game tonight. They have a 3-game set against the Mariners. Then they take on Houston. We'll see how it goes. Until next time, folks, Josh Levin, E-Ray Sepulveda, I'm Julian Coltree. We'll catch you later.